Karmelo Anthony appealing his murder conviction and sentence of 35 years in prison for stabbing and killing Austin Metcalf at a track meet. Prosecutors say the appeal was expected and that the evidence is on their side. They also dispelled any concern that race was a factor.
Frisco, Texas is a diverse community. The kids that were out there were diverse. Austin, Hunter, Metcalf were good kids that had friends of all races. Karmelo Anthony had friends of all races. So the case simply had nothing to do about race. It wasn't self-defense because two reasons. Basically, you can't provoke a difficulty with someone in Texas and then use it as an excuse to kill them. Another way to think about it is you can't, if somebody throws a punch at you, you can't pull out a gun and shoot them.
Welcome back to the channel. What's popping on the tube? Can I roll on through? Who are you? The coolest dude. I'd like to thank you all for the likes, shares, and views. Subscribing to reactions from us made for you. You got to click that notification button too, so when we upload that new, you will know what to do. Kick back, relax, the visual satisfaction. It's the DOK, about to bang another reaction. Hey, what's poppin' YouTube, man? It's your boy, coolest dude on YouTube, man, and we coming with this story, man. Everybody been talking about it. We only want, like, just fairness and some real justice for our people, man. For some reason, it seems like we the outcasts of the whole race war or something. I don't understand it. You know what I'm saying? The most athletic, the most, you know what I'm saying? We could go out in the sun and stand all day. You know what I mean? Straight up. So I just don't understand why so much hatred and racism for the black people, man. That's crazy now. It's a lot of bad apples in every race. So you can't point out our bad apple and blame it on all of us. We know it's a lot of white people out there that love us, that care about us. We love them and care about them. But it's a bunch in every race that always want to, like, F it up. You know what I'm saying? We living in an effed up world, y'all. You feel me? I got a song called that. I should play it at the end of the thing, but I ain't gonna get all into it, man. It ain't about me. It's about free Karmelo Anthony, man, if he didn't do it intentionally. You know what I'm saying? Let's go.
How can 12 jurors look at the exact same video clip and see two completely different crimes? In a Texas courtroom, prosecutors just dropped the definitive footage of the moment Austin Metcalf was fatally stabbed under a team tent. But depending on who you ask, this tape either seals a life sentence or proves total innocence. The most shocking part is that the jury just heard the defendant's exact words recorded on a live police body cam just seconds after the blade was dropped. But the defense claims the state is hiding the real story. A severe physical threat from a football player over 60 pounds heavier. We are breaking down the exact frame-by-frame footage the jury saw, so you can decide the verdict for yourself. If you want the real truth behind the headlines, hit subscribe to U.S. Crime Cases right now. We break down the evidence, so you decide. When I first looked at this case, I had to stop and just take a deep breath. You see these headlines, and it is so easy to forget that we are talking about real kids. Real families whose lives were completely destroyed in a matter of minutes. The date is April 2nd, 2025. We are at David Kuykendall Stadium in Frisco, Texas. It is supposed to be a standard, routine high school track and field event. If you've ever been to one of these, you know exactly what the vibe is like. It is usually a good time, right? Hundreds of teenagers are hanging out, laughing, and eating snacks. Coaches with clipboards are yelling times. Parents are scattered across the metal bleachers with their phones out, ready to record their kids running. It is just a normal, everyday community event. Austin Metcalf was there. Austin was not just a name on a police report or a blurry figure in a courtroom video. He was a son, a varsity athlete, and a twin brother. His twin, Hunter, was right there with him that morning. They were Memorial High School students, big guys who played football, just hanging out together at a track meet on a Thursday morning. You think about the bond between twin brothers, the inside jokes, the shared life, and you just think, wow. It breaks my heart to know how this day ends for them. But the morning quickly takes a turn. If you live in Texas, you know how the weather works. A severe thunderstorm drops out of nowhere. The sky gets incredibly dark, the wind picks up, and heavy downpours suddenly roll in. Track meets do not just pack up and go home when it rains, they go into a weather delay. So you have dozens of student athletes scrambling across the field to get out of the storm. Everyone is running for cover. They start cramming under these small pop-up canopy tents set up by the different schools. You have probably seen them, just basic canvas tops with 4 metal legs. Suddenly, the environment instantly shifts. It goes from a wide-open sports stadium where everyone has space to breathe to a claustrophobic, high-tension waiting room. Teenagers are packed shoulder to shoulder. It is loud. The rain is hammering against the canvas roof. Kids are talking over each other, and they are completely trapped by the pouring rain outside. Under the Memorial High School team tent, the space is entirely filled with Memorial athletes. It is their designated spot. But sitting among them is a student from a rival school, 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony from Centennial High. He is sitting quietly on the metal bleachers under the canopy with his backpack resting on his lap, trying to stay dry, just like everyone else. He is alone in a sea of kids from another school. I see this kind of setup and I immediately know it is a recipe for trouble. This is where the collision point happens. It starts so small. Memorial students start noticing that a kid from another school is taking up space in their designated area. In high school, territorial stuff like that actually matters to teenagers. What starts as a few sideways glances and whispers quickly turns into a direct verbal confrontation. Enter Austin Metcalf and his twin brother, Hunter. Both are Memorial students, and they approach Karmelo. They look at him and tell him he needs to leave. Now, if you put yourself in their shoes for a second, you can kind of see both sides building up. To Austin and Hunter, this is their team's tent. Their teammates are standing in the rain while a kid from a rival school is taking up a dry seat. But if you look at it from Karmelo's perspective, the stadium layout is working against him. The tent is completely boxed in by the metal bleachers at his back and the massive storm right in front of him. There is no easy way to just stand up and walk away without pushing through a tight crowd of rival students into a heavy downpour. The verbal exchange between Austin and Karmelo only lasts about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. But in those 2 minutes, the tension skyrockets. The volume goes up. Other kids start turning around to watch. You know how it is when a crowd forms around an argument. The pressure to not back down gets so intense. Witnesses say Karmelo was asked to leave as many as 15 different times. 15 times. They told him to get up and go. He refuses. He stays sitting down, his hands in his lap near his backpack. I think about those 2 minutes a lot. If someone had just walked away, if a coach had walked by at that exact second, or if the rain had just let up, Austin would still be here. But none of that happened. This brief, stubborn argument over a simple seat under a tent instantly escalates into physical contact. We will talk more about exactly who touched who first when we look at the trial evidence. But the moment the physical line is crossed, everything breaks down. It is not like a movie where there's a long, drawn-out fight. It is terrifyingly fast. It is...
Hey, y'all, wait, real quick, though. See, they started off messing with him, telling them to leave. Why? You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. So I look at it like when you mess with people, man, don't do that. You don't know what's on their heart that day, what's on their mind, what they've been doing. You know what I'm saying? They could have lost a family member or something. It's like, man, leave people alone. They should have just left dog alone and he'd be here.
Messy. In a matter of seconds, amidst a crowd of panicking teenagers, the shoving starts, and then a knife is pulled. A single strike is made. It happens so fast that most of the kids standing right next to them do not even realize a weapon was used. They probably just thought it was a hard punch. But then Austin Metcalf falls to the ground. When the police arrive, the chaos is absolute. I cannot even imagine the terror of being under that tent. Kids are screaming, crying, and running out into the rain. Austin is bleeding out on the wet rubber track. His twin brother, Hunter, is right there with him, screaming for help, watching his brother's life slip away right in front of him. Think about that for a second. Holding your own twin brother on the ground at a high school track meet, begging for an ambulance. It is the kind of trauma that a family never, ever recovers from. Meanwhile, Karmelo is detained near the edge of the stadium by the police. He does not run far. The cops put him in handcuffs, and the body cam captures everything he says. Both of their lives, Austin's and Karmelo's, are effectively over in the span of a 2-minute argument. Two families get that horrible phone call that no parent should ever have to answer. But when the trial finally begins, the jury realizes that figuring out who is legally at fault is not going to be easy at all. Because when the prosecution presses play on the surveillance video, they do not just show a tragedy. They paint a picture of a cold-blooded killer who knew exactly what he was doing when he unzipped that bag. When the prosecution finally stands up to address the jury, the energy in that courtroom shifts completely. You can actually feel it in the air. They do not hold back, not even for a second. They want the jury to look at that Frisco ISD stadium footage and see one very specific thing: a clear, undeniable case of provoked, unjustified murder. They are looking right at the jurors, making direct eye contact, trying to make them understand that this was not some tragic accident or a couple of kids just getting out of hand on a rainy day. This was a choice. Through the state's eyes, the surveillance video shows a trap being set. Think about how chilling that concept is for a moment. A trap. The prosecution breaks down the footage step by step, pausing the video, pointing at the screens to make sure everyone is following along. They point out how Karmelo consciously walks into the memorial team tent area and sits down. Now remember, there are other places he could have gone. Even with the heavy rain pouring down, there were other awnings, other sections of the bleachers where his own teammates were. But he chooses that exact spot, surrounded by a rival team. When the memorial athletes, including Austin Metcalf, walk up and tell him to leave, Karmelo has every opportunity in the world to just stand up, walk out into the rain, and walk away. If he does that, Austin goes home to his family that afternoon. We are not here talking about this. Instead, he stays seated. He essentially anchors himself to the metal bleachers. It is really hard to sit in a courtroom and listen to this, especially when you look over at Austin's family. You see his parents sitting there in the front row, just having to absorb the idea that their boy walked right into a situation that was escalating by design. I look at him and just think, wow, the pain of hearing someone break down your son's last moments like a tactical play on a whiteboard is unimaginable. You can see the physical toll it takes on them every time the prosecutor points at the screen. And then you have Hunter, the twin brother. He is sitting right there, listening to the state describe the boy who took his other half. Twins share a bond that most of us cannot even begin to understand, and Hunter had to watch that bond get severed in real time. So when the prosecution brings up witness after witness to the stand to drive this point home, the emotion in the room is just raw. We are talking about teenagers, kids who had to watch their classmate bleed out, now having to sit in a sterile courtroom, put their hand on a Bible, and recount every single second of it under oath. These young witnesses testify that Karmelo was asked to leave over and over again. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Instead of leaving, the witnesses say Karmelo just sat there with his hands completely hidden inside his backpack, which was resting right on his lap. Just picture that for a second. Put yourself right there under that crowded tent. The tension is rising, the rain is loud, people are yelling at him to move, and he is just sitting there with his hands concealed in a bag. When Austin finally told him to get out in a more forceful way, Karmelo allegedly looked back at him and said, "Touch me and find out," or "Punch me and see what happens." When I read those words in the court transcripts, I just paused. Right? That changes the entire complexion of the argument. That is not the behavior of someone who is scared or trying to avoid a conflict. That is the behavior of someone drawing a line in the sand and daring another person to cross it. The state wants the jury to focus entirely on one specific word, and that word is intent. In a normal high school fistfight, we all know how it goes. Kids shove each other, they throw some sloppy punches, maybe someone gets a bloody nose or a bruised ego, a coach breaks it up, and everyone gets suspended. It is a tale as old as time. But the prosecution heavily highlights the weapon choice to prove this was never, ever going to be just a fist fight. Karmelo was carrying a 3.5-inch folding knife inside his bag. If you haven't subscribed to U.S. Crime Cases yet, hit that button now. We dive into the psychology of cases like this every single week. So let's talk about the physical mechanics of using a folding knife for a moment, because the prosecution spends a lot of time on this, right? You do not just accidentally use it. It is not like picking up a random rock on the ground in the heat of the moment, and it is definitely not like just throwing a blind punch when you feel threatened. Using a weapon like that requires intentional steps. You have to actively decide to reach into your bag. You have to feel around and find the knife among your school things, pull it out, manually flip the blade open so it securely locks into place, grip the handle tight so it doesn't slip, and then physically drive it forward into another human being's chest. I see the prosecutor pantomiming this exact motion for the jury, and it is an incredibly powerful, disturbing visual. It forces everyone to realize that between the shove and the stab, there were multiple micro-decisions made. The state frames this specific series of actions not as some blind, instinctual reaction to a high school argument getting a little too heated. They frame it as a deliberate, malicious choice. They argue that Karmelo escalated the fight from 0 to lethal force in a split second. He bypassed the shoving, bypassed the punching, and went straight to the knife. The district attorney looked right at the jury and called it a sneak attack. Hearing those words echo in a silent courtroom, you cannot help but look over at Austin's twin brother, Hunter. You realize the absolute nightmare he is living every single day. He lost his brother, his other half, to a sneak attack over a seat on a bleacher. It is just completely devastating. You really feel the gravity of it in that room. And just when the jury is trying to process the sheer mechanics of the stabbing and the emotional weight of it all, the prosecution drops their heaviest piece of evidence. This is the moment everyone in the gallery leans forward. They play the police body cam footage from the exact moment Karmelo was detained outside the stadium, just minutes after the stabbing. You watch the screen in the courtroom, and it is shaky, chaotic footage. You can hear the rain, the sirens, the yelling. Officer Eduardo Cortez points his weapon, commands Karmelo to raise his hands, and places him in handcuffs right there on the wet pavement. It is a highly charged, adrenaline-fueled situation. On the live body cam audio, you hear the officer talking into his shoulder radio, telling dispatch that he has the alleged suspect detained. And then it happens. Karmelo looks directly at the police officers, completely unbothered by the rain or the flashing red and blue lights, and says, "I'm not alleged, I did it." When that audio plays, a chill just goes right through the room. I see exactly why the prosecution leans so heavily on this one short sentence. For them, this is the absolute final nail in the coffin. They frame this raw audio snippet as an unremorseful, definitive confession caught live on tape. When you listen closely to the audio, there is no crying. There is no shaking or panic in his voice. There is no denial, no frantic explaining about how he was scared or how things got out of control. There are no tears. It is just a cold, flat, matter-of-fact admission that he drove the knife into Austin Metcalf's chest. It almost sounds like he is just stating the weather. The state looks at the jury, sweeps their gaze across the 12 people who hold Karmelo's fate in their hands, and tells them the story is incredibly simple. You do not need to overthink the blurry video. You do not need to analyze the crowd or the rain delay. Karmelo picked a fight by sitting where he knew perfectly well he did not belong. He waited patiently for someone to take the bait. When Austin finally took that bait and engaged him, Karmelo used a hidden weapon to win the fight instantly, and then he boldly admitted it to the cops right after, almost like he was correcting them for daring to call him alleged. It is a narrative that paints a very dark picture of a 17-year-old kid. By the end of the prosecution's presentation, the courtroom is heavy. I mean, you can practically hear a pin drop. It is suffocating. The state has built this massive, seemingly impenetrable wall of evidence. They have painted a clear, terrifying picture that makes Karmelo Anthony look like a highly aggressive, calculated threat who brought a deadly weapon to a rainy track meet and used it without a single second thought. They made sure the jury deeply felt the weight of Austin's lost life, and they made sure the jury heard the defendant claim responsibility right on camera with zero hesitation. At this point, if you are sitting in the gallery observing the faces of the jury, you are probably thinking the trial is basically over. The evidence feels that strong, that overwhelming. The prosecution did exactly what they needed to do. They told a cohesive, tragic story. But you know how these high-stakes trials go. Nothing is ever as simple as it seems on the first pass. Just as the jury is ready to make up their minds, feeling like they have seen all they need to see, the defense attorney steps up to the podium, the room holds its collective breath, and the defense is about to take everything the jury just watched, every single piece of evidence the state just meticulously laid out, and flip it entirely upside down. The room holds its collective breath as the defense attorney steps up to the podium, and right away he completely shatters the illusion of that video. You know, the state just played that footage and confidently told the jury exactly what they were looking at, framing it as this calculated, inescapable trap. But the defense stops, looks at the jury, and essentially asks them to just look closer, to really use their own eyes and stop blindly accepting the state's narrative. Let's talk about those cameras for a second. There are 5 security cameras positioned all around that stadium, but they are bolted high up on the light poles and the press box. They are designed to capture broad, wide-angle views of the track and the football field, not intimate details of a fight under an awning. The defense points out that the footage is incredibly hazy. It is degraded, pixelated, and completely washed out by the severe storm. When you zoom in on the Memorial Team tent, you cannot actually see faces. You definitely cannot see hands, and you absolutely cannot see individual precise movements. Wow. It is basically just a blurry, chaotic blob of people shifting around under a dark canvas roof while heavy rain pours down all around them. The defense attorney looks at the jurors and argues that the state is just projecting a story of cold-blooded murder onto a blurry shadow. He points out how incredibly dangerous it is to look at a cluster of gray pixels and confidently declare that it proves a teenager had malicious intent in his heart. It makes you second-guess everything you just watched. Then the defense introduces the single most important context of the entire trial. This is the piece that changes how you view everything. The piece the prosecution tried to completely gloss over. The stark physical disparity between these two boys. Up until now, the prosecution just painted Austin Metcalf as another student asking Karmelo to leave the tent. Just 2 high school kids arguing over a seat on a rainy day. But the defense pulls out the actual physical statistics, and I see people in the courtroom physically react to the numbers, right? Austin Metcalf was a massive varsity football linebacker. He stood at 6 feet 1 inch tall, and he weighed a solid 215 pounds. He was a highly conditioned athlete built to tackle people, built to overpower opponents on a football field. His body was literally trained for physical impact. Karmelo Anthony, on the other hand, was 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighed around 130 pounds. Just let that sink in for a second. That is an 85-pound weight difference. In combat sports, they wouldn't even let these two step into the same room together, let alone fight. It is a fundamental mismatch.
Come on, bro.
If you are 130 pounds sitting down and a guy almost twice your size is towering over you, demanding you move, the intimidation factor is completely off the charts. Your brain immediately registers that you're in severe physical danger if things go south. I see exactly how the defense played this. They didn't just deny the state's timeline, they completely flipped the perspective. They bring those exact same teenage witnesses back to the stand, the ones who said Karmelo wouldn't move and just sat there. But this time, the defense asks different questions. They get them to admit what really triggered the sudden violence, because it was not Karmelo who threw the first physical strike. Under oath, the defense draws out the admission that Austin Metcalf actually initiated the physical contact. A 215-pound linebacker leaned over and delivered a violent, two-handed shove to the shoulders of a seated 130-pound kid. Think about the physics of that. Think about the sheer force. You are trapped on metal bleachers, boxed in by a massive storm, surrounded by kids from a rival school who actively want you gone. You literally cannot just stand up and walk backward because there are bleachers behind you, and there's a solid wall of angry athletes in front of you. And then the biggest guy there puts his hands on you and shoves you hard. It shifts the entire dynamic from a stubborn, aggressive kid to a terrified kid acting on pure survival instinct.
Because I would have did the same thing. Hey, you know what I'm saying? Hope I wouldn't have got no all-white jury, but, you know, and the cameras would have rolled a little better. But yeah, if you way bigger than me, I'm not going to stab you, though. You know what I mean? Straight up. I got you. Another way. Faster.
Your fight or flight response kicks in, but you can't fly because you are cornered. Suddenly, the entire narrative flips. I see the jury leaning back in their chairs, reevaluating everything they thought they knew. This is no longer a story about a kid aggressively looking for a fight and setting a trap for a rival student. It is the terrifying story of an outnumbered, undersized teenager who is completely surrounded by a rival team, trapped under a tent with nowhere to run, who was just physically attacked by a massive athlete. It changes the whole lens of the case. The defense then takes the state's absolute biggest piece of evidence, that shocking body cam confession, and entirely recontextualizes it. Remember when Karmelo told the officer, "I'm not alleged, I did it," and the prosecution called it a cold-blooded brag? Well, the defense plays the rest of his statements, the ones he made to a coach immediately after the incident, before the cops even cuffed him, when his adrenaline was still spiking. He said, "He put his hands on me. I told him not to. I stabbed him." The defense argues that Karmelo did not say, "I did it" out of malice, pride, or some twisted sense of victory. He said it out of complete transparency because in his mind, he had absolutely nothing to hide. He genuinely believed he was legally protecting his own life after being physically assaulted by a much larger aggressor. He didn't try to run away and hide the weapon in a trash can. He didn't deny it to the police because he thought he was entirely in the right. And they point out something huge. He did not stab Austin multiple times. This wasn't a violent frenzy or an attack fueled by rage. He struck exactly one time to get this massive 215-pound threat off of him, dropped the knife right there on the bleachers, and ran for his life to get away from the rest of the football team. That single strike is crucial. It speaks to a panic reaction to create distance, not a calculated, premeditated assassination. This leaves the jury trapped in a profoundly difficult legal dilemma. The judge instructs them to look at the exact wording of the Texas self-defense law. And the wording is tricky when you apply it to the messy reality of real life. Does a physical push from a much larger, heavier individual legally justify the use of a lethal weapon? Does a 130-pound kid have the right to use a folding knife when a 215-pound athlete violently puts his hands on him in a crowded, hostile environment where there is no easy way to retreat? Or did Karmelo completely cross the legal line the exact second he unzipped his bag and opened that blade? It is a heavy question, and the answer is absolutely not black and white. The emotional cost in that courtroom is just suffocating. It is so heavy you can barely breathe. I remember during the playback of the video, both families actually had to step out into the hallway. They simply couldn't bear to watch it again. You have one family completely destroyed, grieving the loss of a vibrant son who literally died in his twin brother's arms over a completely senseless 2-minute argument about a bleacher seat. A family forever broken, staring at an empty chair at the dinner table, knowing that their boys went to a routine track meet and only one came home. And just across the aisle, you have another family watching their teenage son, knowing he might face the rest of his natural life inside a cold, concrete cell for a split second, panicked decision he made while backed into a corner in the rain. They are terrified they are going to lose their boy forever to the prison system. You look at both sides of that gallery, and you realize there are absolutely no winners here. Just 2 ruined lives, a traumatized community, and 12 ordinary people who have to sit in a jury box and decide what justice even looks like in a tragedy this incredibly dark. Now the case rests entirely in your hands. If you were sitting in that jury box, looking at that exact same blurry stadium footage, what would you see? Would you see a life sentence conviction for a calculated murder, or a young man defending himself against a massive physical threat? Thank you for staying till the end. Please subscribe to U.S. Crime Cases, leave your verdict in the comments below, and see you next time.
All right. Well, I just want to say, hey, I'm glad I keep mine, you know what I'm saying, on me. You know what I'm saying? Multiples. You know what I'm saying? In the case and all, I keep multiples. So therefore, you know, just don't fuck with us, and then you know y'all won't have to deal with that. You know what I mean? That's real talk. I keep all these constantly every time I roll. But see, I'm not no little kid. You know what I'm saying? I'm a grown man. My mobility is not like how it used to be when I was younger. So therefore, you know what I'm saying? I need all of these. All of these. And then it's like I carry a couple of more extra things with me. So just don't go up to the person, just don't go up to people just messing with them. Dog wanted to go over there and sit down because it was raining. It was a cool spot. And dude, the big dude had to show off in front of the cheerleaders and all that. Matter of fact, you should have been at a football game. Why you had a track meet? You know what I'm saying? You should have went home after football practice. Real talk. It's like if it's going to be your people for people, because it's like all his people rooted for him. So we're going to root for Karmelo. Straight up. So we really need to see that video, and we need to see what's going down with it. You know what I mean? But I look at it like this, and to all our other little bitty young little things, don't take them to school though. I ain't gonna be no bad influencer. Don't take them to school, but keep something on you though, something, because they out there always trying to f with us. So you know what I'm saying. So if y'all kids behave and stop messing with people, y'all won't have to deal with that. And then when it happened to us, don't be tripping. You know what I'm saying? Because y'all people be fucking with us all the time. Excuse my friends. All the time. It'd be getting like 15 years, 10 years. So y'all got to lower the sentence or whatever. He did what he did. You know what I'm saying? Dogs shouldn't have been messing with him. But I look at it like y'all need to like decrease some of them years, man. You know what I mean? Straight up. So, you know, that's what I got to say about it. And I'm up out of here, man. Coolest dude on YouTube. And I look at it like this. Just don't come over here in this space over here, because I got too many things over here. Too many. And they're legal. They're legal. So we up out of here, man. Coolest dude, man. Hey, stop fucking with people. That's the key today. And maybe you'll live longer. Real talk. If you don't mess with people, you live longer. We up out of here.